Welcome to Threads of Truth, a podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we're going to explore a case that, well, it's cast a really long, chilling shadow over one of the world's most prestigious universities for decades. This is the story of a truly perplexing and tragic murder, a mystery that stayed stubbornly cold for over 40 years.
Yeah, until science finally caught up, really, pulled that critical thread.
Exactly. Here, we're guiding you through your sources on the murder of Arlis Perry.
It's a case that, even though it's technically solved, it still echoes with some profound questions, doesn't it? Especially the why.
Absolutely.
The crime scene itself was just so incredibly bizarre, sort of ritualistic almost. It didn't just fuel rumors. It basically ignited this widespread terror and speculation across the whole community.
Right.
So this isn't just a story about solving a crime. It's also about understanding how something like this open wound, can just persist within a community for generations. And how one single piece of evidence, carefully saved, could finally speak volumes decades later.
Precisely. Our mission today is to really walk through the documented timeline of this haunting case. We'll delve into the core enigmas that kept investigators, baffled for so long, and ultimately explore the shocking conclusion that finally brought a measure of peace, even if it didn't deliver all the answers people wanted.
Yeah, peace, but maybe not complete closure.
It's a compelling journey, from just inexplicable horror to a truly remarkable scientific breakthrough. We'll spend our time understanding the complex aftermath and what lingering questions are still out there.
And what's really striking here, I think, is how the initial perception of the crime and the almost theatrical, shocking staging of it, how that pushed theories in one specific direction towards the esoteric, the occult. Meanwhile, the actual brutal truth was, it was hiding in plain sight all along, just waiting for the right technology to finally expose it.
It's a powerful illustration, isn't it? How assumptions, even if they seem logical at the time, can obscure what's actually a simpler but maybe even more disturbing reality. So let's begin our exploration by trying to understand the young woman at the heart of this, Arlis Perry. She was just 19 years old when her life was so incomprehensibly cut short.
19. So young.
Yeah. And she was a newlywed. She'd actually embarked on a pretty significant life change just months before this happened, moving from the quiet, wide open spaces of Bismarck, North Dakota, to the very different environment of the Stanford University campus in Palo Alto, California. Busy, progressive, intellectually charged.
That shift alone, it paints a vivid picture, doesn't it? You imagine this young woman, probably rooted in more maybe traditional Midwestern values,
right,
suddenly dropped into the buzz of a major California university town in the mid-'70s. That's a stark contrast.
Totally different world.
And she wasn't actually a student there herself. She was there with her husband, Bruce Perry. He was a sophomore at Stanford. And Arlis, she'd quickly started building a life there, got a job as a receptionist at a local law firm, settling in, forging a new identity, building a home, really starting her adult life. It just felt like a life full of promise, a new chapter just starting.
And then tragically slammed shut.
Exactly.
So let's turn to the night of Saturday, October 12th, 1974. It began, like so many evenings do, with something that seemed, completely trivial. A minor disagreement between Arlis and Bruce.
It's a normal couple thing.
Yeah, they had a small argument, one of those everyday squabbles, apparently, about the tire pressure on their car.
Tire pressure. Wow.
Right. The kind of petty annoyance couples have all the time. Something you'd normally forget instantly, maybe laugh about later.
But this one wasn't forgettable, with a just heartbreaking irony, right? This tiny little spat was the catalyst. It led Arlis to want to get out of their dorm room for a bit, clear her head.
Okay.
She told Bruce she was going to the Stanford Memorial Church. Just needed some space, wanted to pray, find some peace.
Going to the church late at night to pray.
Yeah, that act itself, seeking quiet reflection in a sacred space, it just adds this unbearable layer of poignancy and mystery, too, to what happened next. It speaks to this desire for calm, for grounding, right before, what turned out to be the most unholy of nights.
And Bruce, her husband, he certainly didn't sense any immediate danger or anything profoundly wrong at first.
No, probably not.
It was Saturday night. Maybe she just needed some time alone. But, as the hours ticked by, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and Arlis still hadn't come back to their dorm. His initial, maybe mild concern started turning into real worry, then dread.
Yeah, you can imagine that rising panic.
By 3 a.m. on October 13th, just a few hours after she left, his anxiety had grown so much that he felt he had to call the campus police.
Right.
And their phone call, made in the dead of night, Sunday morning,
Yeah.
that officially started the missing person case, which tragically escalated very, very quickly into something far more sinister, far more horrifying.
And this is where the timeline really shifts, doesn't it? From a worried husband's anxiety to a truly horrifying discovery. The person who claimed to have found Arlis's body was a campus security guard, Stephen Blake Crawford.
Crawford, okay.
Now, it's really crucial for you, the listener, to remember that Crawford wasn't just any security guard. He was actually a former Stanford police officer.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he knew the system.
Exactly. That background meant he knew police procedures, investigative protocols, and maybe most importantly, he knew the layout of the Stanford campus buildings inside and out, including the Memorial Church.
That insider knowledge feels chilling now.
It really does. It would prove to be a very chilling factor.
So Crawford reported finding Arlis's body. When was it? Early morning.
Around 5:45 a.m., Sunday, October 13th. But here's the thing. Right from the very start, there's a critical inconsistency in his story to the first officers who arrived.
Already.
He told them what was later described as a seemingly false story about the church doors being locked when he supposedly found her.
Locked doors. Why is that significant?
Well, it was a detail that just didn't quite seem right to the investigators later on. A subtle discrepancy in his story. It would turn out to be incredibly significant decades later, but even then it immediately raised, a little flicker of suspicion. A small thread just didn't quite fit the narrative of an innocent discovery.
Interesting. So right off the bat, something felt a little off about his account.
Precisely the kind of detail an experienced investigator, someone trained to spot anomalies, would flag, a narrative hiccup. And the scene itself, once officers got inside and saw everything, it was beyond disturbing, just truly beyond comprehension.
Where exactly was she found?
Her body was in the east transept of the Stanford Memorial Church, positioned with this chilling, deliberate closeness to the main altar.
Here's the altar. Wow.
Yeah. The profound reverence and sanctity of that setting, it just contrasted so starkly, so grotesquely with the absolute brutality and desecration of the crime.
It sounds like it was meant to shock.
It really felt like it, designed to shock the very soul.
And the manner of death itself.
Mm-hmm.
You said brutal.
Unspeakably violent. Arlis had been stabbed repeatedly in the back of the head with an ice pick.
An ice pick.
Yeah. And beyond that, there were clear signs of strangulation, too. It indicated a prolonged, intensely brutal struggle.
Horrifying.
But what really set this crime scene apart, what instantly cemented its infamy and ignited that fear and wild speculation across the whole region, was the incredibly bizarre and frankly ritualistic posing of her body.
Okay, this is where those early theories must have come from.
Exactly. This is exactly where the pervasive rumors of, occult activity, dark satanic rituals, where they really took hold and started to spiral.
What did they find? How was she posed?
Arlis was discovered naked from the waist down. A 3-foot altar candle, obviously taken from the church itself,
Oh, God.
had been disturbingly inserted into her vagina. And another large altar candle was deliberately placed between her breasts.
That is beyond disturbing. It's deliberately provocative.
It wasn't just a murder, it felt like an act of profound desecration, a shocking violation, not just of a human life, but of a sacred space, too. The deliberate arrangement, using the church's own holy objects in such a grotesque way, it was so profoundly unusual, so deeply shocking. It immediately fueled widespread theories of something far beyond a typical homicide. It really tapped into those simmering societal fears, almost foreshadowing the satanic panic stuff that really blew up later in the 70s and 80s.
I can only imagine the effect on the community.
Mm-hmm.
Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
It's known for academic excellence, this sort of safe, almost idyllic campus bubble.
Right.
And suddenly it's rocked to its core by a crime this brutal, this ritualistic seeming. The impact must have been immediate terror.
Oh, pervasive terror. It led to rampant, uncontrolled speculation. People wondering if there was some dark secret society operating right there, just beneath the surface of everyday life.
Yeah.
This didn't feel like a random act of violence as people understood it. This felt like something else entirely, something deeply disturbing that preyed on their worst fears.
And it's fascinating, but also, as you said, misleading, how the very specific, almost theatrical staging of the scene
Mm-hmm.
kind of dictated the initial perception and maybe even the early investigation to some extent.
Absolutely. It was so out of the ordinary, so deliberately shocking, it almost screamed for an extraordinary explanation, which naturally led many people to jump straight to conclusions about occult connections, especially given the cultural climate of the mid-70s. People were kind of primed for those kinds of explanations. This fear of secret cults involved in ritual abuse was just starting to bubble up.
Right. The satanic panic was just getting started.
Exactly.
So with a crime scene this shocking, this unsettling, the initial investigation must have been intense, a flurry of activity.
Oh, yeah. But it faced immediate and significant challenges, as is pretty standard, really, in spousal homicides.
Right.
Arlis's husband, Bruce Perry, was an immediate initial suspect. It's just logical procedure in such tragic circumstances.
Then to look at the spouse.
You have to. And Bruce, to his credit, and just for clarity for you listening, he fully cooperated with the police from day one, gave detailed statements, answered every question without hesitation, did everything you'd expect a cooperative witness or a grieving husband to do.
Okay.
And over time, his complete cooperation, plus the fact there was just no contradictory evidence, no inconsistencies implicating him, it gradually led to him being officially cleared.
So he was ruled out.
He was ruled out, which is common, necessary, but it meant the intense focus of the investigation had to shift decisively somewhere else.
Which brings us right back to
Stephen Blake Crawford.
the security guard who found the body.
Exactly. And interestingly, he was a consistent person of interest from the very beginning of the investigation.
Really, from the start, even with the discovery.
Yeah. And that detail would haunt the case and the investigators for decades. The chilling idea that the killer was right there, interacting with the first wave of law enforcement.
Wow.
And notably, and this is huge in retrospect, he refused to provide a DNA sample at the time.
Refused. Back in 74.
Refused. Now, maybe that wasn't immediately seen as totally damning back then, but looking back now, with what we know about DNA,
It takes on enormous significance.
undeniable significance, yeah.
So even without DNA back then, that refusal, plus the little inconsistency about the locked doors.
Right. It must have solidified him on a kind of mental shortlist for the investigators, you'd think.
They must have had strong suspicions. Gut feelings, maybe?
Driven by instinct, circumstantial evidence. But they critically lacked the definitive, irrefutable proof. Nothing solid enough for an arrest, let alone a conviction.
But what they did have, and this turned out to be absolutely crucial, was meticulously preserved forensic evidence.
Yes. Specifically, semen was discovered on a kneeling pillow near Arlis's body inside the church.
Okay. Semen evidence. Very important.
Critically important. And it wasn't just that. They also painstakingly found a partial palm print on one of the candles at the crime scene.
A palm print, too. Wow.
Yeah. And this is where you really have to recognize the dedication, the foresight of those investigators back in the 70s.
Definitely.
Working with the tools they had, they understood the long-term importance of saving everything, every piece of physical evidence, even if the tech back then couldn't fully exploit it.
He knew someday, baby.
Exactly. They had the wisdom to know that science might advance. Something might change.
Which it obviously did. But back then.
Back then, precisely. While this invaluable evidence was saved with remarkable foresight, the technology of the 1970s was just completely insufficient to definitively match it to anyone.
No DNA analysis as we know it.
Didn't exist. Genetic fingerprinting was still decades away from being a practical forensic tool. So despite the gruesome crime, the preserved evidence, the initial persons of interest, the case just agonizingly went cold.
One of those haunting, protracted silences in true crime history. A story left totally unfinished.
For over 4 long decades. And this chilling mystery, it cast this incredibly long, dark shadow over Stanford University, a place that prides itself on, intellectual light, safety. This deeply unsettling, unsolved murder created this lasting, pervasive sense of unease. It became a dark, haunting, almost mythical part of the university's history.
And the fact that the killer, as we now know for sure from your sources,
Yeah.
was actually a campus security guard,
Mm-hmm.
someone in a position of authority, trust,
Yeah.
meant to protect people.
Yeah.
That just adds a whole other terrifying layer.
It really does. Imagine walking through those grounds, going to class, living your life, all the while knowing the perpetrator had walked freely among everyone under the very cloak of authority for literally generations.
That's the ultimate betrayal of trust, isn't it?
Absolutely. A security guard whose job it is to safeguard people and property turns out to be the very assailant, the
Yeah.
perpetrator of such a heinous crime.
The psychological impact on a community, especially a close-knit one like a university campus.
It's immense. It fundamentally changes a place that should feel safe, like a sanctuary for learning, into one with this underlying current of fear of vulnerability.
So the Arlis Perry murder wasn't just a crime, it became this grim legend.
Whispered about for decades. Countless theories swirling around because the truth wasn't known. No resolution in sight until very recently.
But then, after decades pass, modern science finally steps in, offers that elusive thread of truth that was just waiting there all along.
Right.
This was in 2018. A dedicated cold case unit decided to re-examine the seminal evidence that seamen found at the scene, which had been so remarkably preserved all those years.
And this is where we really see the transformative power of forensic science advancements. It's a revolution that's reshaped criminal justice.
How did they approach it?
They were able to use sophisticated, advanced DNA technology, techniques that were just pure science fiction back in 1974. They reevaluated that decades-old evidence, and the cold case unit actually succeeded in generating a complete, robust DNA profile from material that had been sitting in an evidence locker for over 40 years.
That alone is incredible, getting a full profile from something that old.
It's a monumental scientific achievement, a testament to the meticulous work of the original investigators who saved it so well, and the modern forensic scientists who could finally analyze it.
So once they had that complete DNA profile, what was the next step?
They took the next crucial step using a technique that has totally revolutionized cold case investigations recently. They cross-referenced it with publicly available genealogical databases.
Ah, the genetic genealogy approach. Can you explain that a bit for our listeners? How does that work? It's not like CODIS, right?
Right, it's different. Investigative genetic genealogy, as it's known, it isn't about finding a direct match in a criminal database like CODIS. Instead, you take the unknown DNA profile from the crime scene and you upload it to commercial ancestry databases. The same ones people use to trace their family tree or find out their heritage.
Like Ancestry DNA or 23andMe.
Exactly those types. It then searches through millions of genetic profiles, but it's not looking for the perpetrator directly. It's looking for relatives, close ones, distant cousins, anyone related to the source of the DNA.
Okay, so it finds family members.
Yes. And from there, investigators have to painstakingly build out a huge family tree, working backward and forward through generations, trying to pinpoint potential suspects who fit those familial connections.
So they connected the crime scene DNA not directly to Crawford at first, but to his relatives.
That's exactly right. They effectively built his family tree, starting from just that tiny genetic snippet found on the kneeling pillow. It was utterly impossible back in 1974.
Wow. And this process, it led them where?
It led them directly to the family of Stephen Blake Crawford.
Back to him.
Back to him. The circle, after 44 agonizing years, finally started to close, bringing them inexorably back to the very person who claimed to have discovered the body all those years ago.
It's an incredible vindication of those early investigators' instincts, isn't it?
It really is. Even though they didn't have the tools back then to prove their suspicions, the threads of truth, no matter how tangled by time and deception, were finally being unspooled by science.
So the final decisive confrontation, they came on June 28th, 2018.
That's the date. Santa Clara County Sheriff's deputies, armed with a carefully obtained search warrant, arrived at Stephen Blake Crawford's home. The net, after all those decades, was unequivocally closing in.
And what happened when they arrived?
Well, in what became this tragic and definitive final act, before the police could even execute their warrant and place him under arrest, Stephen Blake Crawford committed suicide with a pistol.
He killed himself.
He did. And that action, while heartbreaking for many reasons, especially for Arlis Perry's family, who were denied a trial,
Of course.
it served as this grim, undeniable, conclusive confirmation of his guilt. His ultimate desperate act provided the final terrible piece of the puzzle, left no room for doubt about his culpability.
It's such a profoundly bittersweet ending, isn't it?
It really is.
On one hand, you have the overwhelming DNA evidence combined with Crawford's suicide.
Yeah.
It officially, definitively closed the case. The who was finally answered, unequivocally.
Right.
But on the other hand, it left so many people feeling that the full story, the ultimate why behind his brutal, bizarre, just incomprehensible actions that would forever remain elusive, tragically buried with him.
Yeah.
The justice system formally was denied its full process, and Arlis's family was denied that full measure of public accountability.
Absolutely. The closure in terms of identifying who did it that arrived. But that profound human element, understanding motive, facing the perpetrator in court, hearing testimony, exploring the whole psychological landscape.
All lost.
Irretrievably lost. And this is a common, incredibly difficult part of cases resolved by a suspect's death. Justice doesn't get its full due process, and maybe most painfully, the victims' families are often left with this incomplete picture, forever searching for answers to why.
And that leads us perfectly into a really critical part of our exploration today, unpacking some of the main theories that swirled around this case for so long. And then, crucially, how the irrefutable truth, once it was revealed, just radically reshaped our understanding. For decades, especially right after the murder, the most pervasive, the most chilling theory was definitely the satanic cult theory.
Oh, yeah. And it's pretty easy to see why that theory emerged with such force and got so much traction when you look at your sources, the highly bizarre, the disturbing, the almost ritualistic nature of that crime scene.
Right.
Particularly the posing of Arlis's body, the symbolic use of the altar candles, the setting inside a church. It powerfully suggested occult connections to the public and even, understandably, to some early investigators.
It felt like something out of a horror movie.
Exactly. Tapped into a deep, primal fear of hidden, malevolent forces.
And it tapped into that specific societal fear of the era too, didn't it? With the satanic panic narratives just starting to bubble up.
Yeah, people were kind of culturally primed to believe in secret, sinister groups doing things like this.
But for all its compelling horror, the glaring gaps in that theory were always there, weren't they? Even if the public overlooked them in the shock.
Yes. Despite the visually shocking, suggestive cues at the scene, that theory was never, ever supported by any concrete, verifiable evidence or definitive police findings.
No actual link.
The police never found any credible connection, none whatsoever, between the crime and any actual satanic group, occult practice, or organized cult activity. Nothing beyond the immediate, disturbing staging of the scene itself.
So it was mostly fueled by sensationalism.
Pretty much. Sensationalism, the sheer shock of the crime, broader cultural anxieties, rather than any substantive evidence that would hold up. The why simply wasn't that complicated in a way, but maybe far more terrifying in its awful simplicity.
Then, for many years, there was also the random murder theory.
Right.
This idea that Arlis, being a newlywed, new to the huge Stanford campus, could have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. An unfortunate random victim in a large, anonymous university setting.
And that seemed plausible to many, right? Given the initial lack of any obvious personal connections between Arlis and anyone on campus who might want to harm her. Once Bruce was cleared, anyway.
But that theory, too, while seeming logical on the surface,
had its own critical gaps. And ultimately, it was completely definitively disproven by the irrefutable power of the DNA evidence.
because the DNA pointed to.
The DNA profile from the scene unequivocally identified the killer as Stephen Blake Crawford, the very person who found the body.
Not a random stranger at all.
Emphatically not. He was a known individual, a campus authority figure, someone intimately connected to the scene right from the beginning.
So that revelation completely shifted the understanding of the crime.
Totally. From a seemingly random act of inexplicable violence to something far more calculated, insidious, terrifying, perpetrated by someone in a position of trust.
Which brings us finally to the Stephen Crawford theory, which is now the confirmed solved case.
The solved case.
And the evidence supporting this conclusion is just overwhelming, undeniably compelling.
You've got the conclusive DNA evidence from the preserved semen. You've got Crawford's highly suspicious behavior right from the start, the false statements about the locked doors, his early telling refusal to give DNA back in '74.
And then, of course,
His ultimate act, Suicide upon being confronted by the police with the evidence against him.
Well, not a direct confession.
No, but in this context, it stands as an extremely strong indicator of guilt. It closes the evidentiary loop in a tragically definitive way.
The pieces, after decades, finally fit together.
Yeah.
Horrifyingly precise, confirming what many suspected but couldn't prove.
Exactly.
But even with the who, definitively answered after all this time. The enduring mystery for so many is still that profound why. We will truly never know the full, unvarnished story of why he did it. Why commit such a brutal, bizarre, desecrating act. He took that horrifying secret with him to his grave.
Leaving this void where true understanding might have been.
Which raises a critical, haunting question for you, the listener, to really think about. Was Arlis Perry's murder a crime of opportunity?
Right, like a spontaneous explosion of violence. Did she just stumble upon him in the church, maybe interrupt something, leading to an immediate, unplanned, fatal attack?
Or was it premeditated? Was he stalking her? Maybe. Or perhaps someone like her. And did her presence in the church late that night just provide the perfect preconceived scenario for an attack he'd already been planning?
We just don't know, and probably never will.
And crucially, how did his specific access, his extensive knowledge of the campus buildings, how did that play a role?
That's a huge factor.
As a Stanford security guard, he'd have master keys, intimate knowledge of routines, the ebb and flow of people, and significant freedom of movement in places like the Memorial Church at all hours, especially late at night when it was quiet. That insider access gave him a crucial chilling advantage, didn't it? Allowed him to be there undetected, commit the crime in that sacred space, and then, maybe most chillingly, discover the body without immediately drawing overwhelming suspicion onto himself beyond those initial small inconsistencies.
It absolutely allowed him for 44 years to essentially control the narrative, to hide in plain sight.
His position of authority didn't just give him the opportunity for the crime itself.
No, it also gave him that literal cloak of perceived trustworthiness. It made his early presence at the scene seem entirely normal, even helpful to the first investigators.
That combination is truly terrifying when you think about it.
It is a predator operating subtly, effectively, under the guise of protection, exploiting the very trust placed in him.
It really highlights how important it is for all of us to question assumptions, doesn't it? Even maybe especially about people in positions of apparent authority and trust.
Absolutely. This case is just a stark, unsettling reminder of that reality.
So as we wrap up our exploration of the Arlis Perry case, let's just take a moment to reflect on some of the key insights, the profound takeaways from this deeply unsettling story. First and foremost, the truly transformative power of DNA technology in solving cold cases. It just cannot be overstated. It's a game changer.
It has unequivocally revolutionized cold case investigations everywhere. The Arlis Perry case is an incredibly powerful testament to this. It shows with stark clarity how advanced DNA analysis, especially using techniques like investigative genetic genealogy, can offer hope and finally bring closure to families decades, sometimes even half a century, after a crime.
Just think about it. A single, minuscule piece of biological evidence, saved so carefully for over 40 years, held the absolute key. It finally brought a definitive resolution to such a complex, bizarre, haunting mystery.
It's a quiet, powerful triumph, really. Relentless scientific progress over time, over the silence of unresolved injustice.
And then there's that truly terrifying reality of the killer in plain sight.
Yeah.
The profoundly chilling aspect that the perpetrator of such a brutal, bizarre crime was a campus security guard. Someone entrusted with the safety of the very community he terrorized.
And this raises an important, unsettling question for you, the listener, doesn't it? About how we perceive safety, how we implicitly trust those in authority, and how that trust can be so profoundly betrayed.
He was effectively a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Hiding in plain sight, living a seemingly normal life for 44 years while knowing what he'd done. It's a sobering reminder that evil doesn't always wear an obvious disguise. Sometimes it masquerades as the protector.
And the fact he was a person of interest from the very beginning, yet still managed to evade justice for so long.
That adds another profound layer of unease and frustration, frankly.
And the lasting psychological impact. This brutal, unsolved murder on a place like Stanford, its community, for generations, We have to consider that deeply.
It was more than just a crime. It altered the fabric of the place. It creates this deep, indelible scar. An unsolved, brutal, bizarre murder like Arlis Perry's can haunt a place for decades. It generates pervasive unease, shatters a community's sense of security, becomes this dark, whispered chapter in its history.
And even though a resolution finally came.
Right. The conflicting emotions that come with that resolution arriving through the killer's suicide rather than a public trial, they're significant. There was no public accounting, no courtroom confession, no detailed testimony to really understand the motive, to grapple with the why. It leaves that lingering void, an unfulfilled desire for complete understanding.
And finally, let's just tie it back to the very essence of this show, the tangled threads of truth. This case presented such starkly conflicting threads for so long, didn't it? A seemingly bizarre ritualistic crime suggesting dark forces versus the stark, chilling reality of a personal, brutal murder by a known individual acting alone with motives forever obscured.
And the long, arduous fight for answers, for justice by Arlis's grieving family over 4 decades, it stands in such sharp contrast to the killer's ultimate act of cowardice, which, yes, confirmed his guilt, but tragically denied them the full measure of justice a trial would have provided.
It highlights that heartbreaking reality, doesn't it? While the truth about who did it was finally discovered, the case officially closed. Justice wasn't fully served in the public arena.
And the ultimate horrifying why remains elusive, a secret taken to the grave, leaving this powerful, enduring mystery for all of us trying to understand these dark threads of truth.
The murder of Arlis Perry. It's a mystery that lingered for over 40 years. The young woman vanishes from a Kansas church, her body's found at a bizarre crime scene, and a community is gripped by fear, haunted by speculation. The threads of truth here were tangled in rumors, the killer's deception, a family's relentless pursuit of justice. Was it a ritual killing or a personal brutal murder? The truth of what happened to Arlis Perry may have been discovered, but that ultimate horrifying, unanswerable question of why, well, died with her killer.
So, what do you, our listener, think of the case of Arlis Perry? Does the DNA evidence provide you with a full sense of closure? Or do you still find yourself grappling with those unanswered questions about the why? Join the conversation on our social media platforms using #ThreadsOfTruth and #ArlisPerry. We'd really love to hear your thoughts.
In our next episode, we follow another disappearance, a young woman named Leah Roberts, whose road trip into the mountains took a turn into mystery, leaving behind more questions than answers.
Thank you for joining us for this exploration. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review for Threads of Truth wherever you listen. Your support helps us continue to shed light on these complex cases and search for the truth one thread at a time.